Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey, chapter 340. It is the first day of the week, aka the Kamehameha workout. I am feeling very good right now, very much ready for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, lifting methodology. Now, the main reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I made an episode right here about how natty or nots are retarded. And part of there where I've discussed this, and I know that this is part of something that I wanted to discuss on its own merit as well, because I was thinking about this today, was the idea of my lifting methodology, but also lifting methodology as a whole, because I think that this is something that is important when distinguishing not only yourself as a lifter, but distinguishing if others basically are aware of what they're talking about. It just truly depends, but there's a lot of little nuances that can make it so you can kind of understand if the person knows or not what they are talking about, really. So I'm going to use a lot of examples of people in this episode and a few other things, as well as my own methodologies and logics that I use for these types of things and why I do things and all this other stuff. And I wanted to just look into it because not only do I want to look at other people's methodologies, maybe just analyze a couple that just surface level, but just understand that, but also look into the idea that you can tell when somebody is about it, if that makes any sense. This helps understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, what their methodologies are, what their ideologies behind these things are, and see where it is or is not malleable, which is interesting when thinking about it, when looking at somebody, whether or not they are natural or not or whatever, because it plays such a big role in it. Because if you are just, I go to the gym and I work really hard, 2 sets to failure, what's the methodology of why you chose to do X, Y, or Z versus the ideas of like, why not do this or why not do more reps, more volume, more whatever. And I think once you analyze that for a person, you can really understand where they are on the spectrum of lifting. If they are if they are beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I mean, I would say I'm probably intermediate, maybe. I don't even think I am. I think I'm still a novice, honestly. In years wise, I'm getting close. I'm like a late novice at this point, but I don't think that I have even come close to being learned. I haven't even come close to learn anything, like 100% of anything that I know. Like I'm still in like maybe 30%. But even with that 30%, I can show you and understand where my methodology lays and why I do everything. And I think that that's the main thing we'll discuss, and a few other things like that when we get to Mother Base. All right, so started this day off with dips, which were nice. But anyways, to the main subject matter at hand here today, lifting methodology. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because this has been an ongoing thing, specifically in the fitness realm, because this is where I'm at, basically. But the idea that a lot of people end up kind of shoo-shooing away their methodology on which they built their physique on, which is a questionable thing because of the fact that it is probably some of the most important stuff in how you do things. And I think a lot of people like to shoo it away because at a certain point, anything works, yes, but at a certain point, not everything works depending on the person. It's very, very weird, like double-edged sword, obviously. And because of that, I think that more people should be critiqued on their methodology, on how they approach training versus anything else that might be happening, really. Because a lot of the time, because of their shooing away, it shows a lack of integrity into what they're doing, or even a lack of knowledge or a lack of willing to a change, which is another thing, but we'll come back to that. I think that personally, my methodology is Very simple. I don't like to deload. I'm not a deload person. I like to continue on. I will maintain the same weights if I need to, and then move on up. I try to regulate my fatigue with the amount of sets and reps that I do, and continue on a slow but steady progress upward, where I will change reps and sets as needed. Weight will stay relatively the same, as I don't want to go down unless I'm doing something where I have to rebuild my form, which you can see in the squats and RDLs, where I'm going ultra slow or just making sure that the muscles are active when they're supposed to be. In the case of squats, my knees aren't getting fucked over because I don't want to have to put on knee sleeves, and I'm trying to make sure that that ends up not having to be the case. But still, regardless of that, that is something that is how I feel about a lot of these lifts, where I want to make sure that my methodology stays consistent regardless of the muscle and or the lift itself. Sure, there are going to be changes, of course, like the reps and the set and the weight and all that other stuff. They're going to change, obviously, but they're going to change depending on the muscle being worked, but I have a consistent level of things. And I think that a lot of the natural lifters you'll see have a methodology to whatever they are doing, which can explain whether you agree with it or not. Still, that regardless of that, you can at least see where they possibly could get where they are. And that's the issue with a lot of the people who aren't being genuine with it. It's very much of a suspect-like thing, because then all of a sudden you have to start wondering, what else are you hiding? Like, why aren't you showing us the training and or just straight up sets? You know, it's like there has to be some reasons why. There are certain people that don't show it or don't show their like exact workout exactly, which is fine, but they are usually strong with their methodology as to what they do and why they do it and how they've progressed and all this other stuff. And I think a lot of people don't like talking about that, because part of it is kind of boring, but part of it is that they don't have any. They don't have the idea. They have no backbone in what they believe. They just kind of go and do, which works up to a certain point, but after a while, if you can't sit there and talk to somebody for like an hour and a half about why you're doing your methodology, you are very much a suspect of being not really knowing what you're talking about. And thus that kind of also leads to the point of, should you be a person that's training others if you don't even know what your methodology is? It's kind of like having your own morals. Some people have them, some people don't, but if you ask a lot of people what they are on their own, they might be able to answer you, but some, they have no goddamn clue. They will probably get everything from a movie or a TV show or a character and just kind of copy and paste that into their own life, not realizing that the entire point of life is to live your life, you know, not live through the lens of somebody else. And this kind of goes with lifting too, in a weird way, where you don't want to do exactly everything that somebody else has done and just copy and paste it with no changes of your own, because you're completely different. That's the main thing. A lot of people who end up becoming very rigid in their lifting methodology, you can see always hit the same similar walls of the people that they end up copying and pasting from, where they have to either turn to anabolics or never really change, and thus they never really grow in certain ways that they would want to. And then all of a sudden they're kind of stuck spinning their wheels in the same place over and over again. You can see this a lot with people who get stuck with certain pains in, like, let's say their hips, and let's say they aren't getting shredded at all, or they aren't doing anything in terms of getting bigger. You know, they're getting stronger, but they haven't detached themselves from the one side of the spectrum to the other. The baseline of the methodology should be able to shift ever so slightly to allow some new information that might be useful to you to come in and change up what you're doing. And I think that is fundamentally another problem that happens with a lot of people, is that they are fundamentally stuck in whatever got them so far without wanting to change it, because they've used it for such a long time that of course it works and they are the proof, but for some reason they just don't want to add something else that could be better or could be different. It all just depends. But I think that the rigidity of it, even though you should be sound in your structures of doing things, you should at least be receptive, at least a little bit, from others' ideas to be willing to possibly adapt some of them to yourself and see how they work for you. And I think that a lot of the people who I talk about who are rigid in their methodology do have this ability where they can change ever so slightly their methodology to something somebody else has, or at least an element of it. And I think that that's what's one of the hallmarks of a good lifter versus one that is stuck spinning their wheels forever. And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand here. Lifting methodology. So the main reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I feel like even though we discuss a lot of things on whether or not people are serious about the gym, I think the lifting methodology of certain characters will help determine whether or not they are serious about it or telling the truth about it or understanding what they're about. I feel like a lot of it gets glossed over because, of course, they just go to the gym, blah, 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 blah. It's like a very glossed over thing, but in reality, if they are really into it, that should be like a main focus of what's going on, really. I don't discuss exactly what I do all the time on these workouts, every single episode, because the episodes aren't necessarily about the workouts. But if I need to talk about anything, then I will talk about it, because it is something that I find is essential to the core tenet of part of the channel, which is what I'm doing, but it isn't necessarily the main subject. And I feel like a lot of these people questioned about these things. They gloss it over, and when in reality, just show people exactly what you do and, show them for like a good while, and then they'll understand whether or not you're actually doing something or you're bullshitting. And I think that that's the main crux of it, really. And that's why I show every exercise that I do all the time with all the sets and everything, because I feel like I am fundamentally showing what I'm doing, and doing what I talk about. I practice what I'm preaching, basically. So that's the entire point with the lifting aspect of it. And I feel like others undervalue it because there's like a certain level of, it's true that you just have to show up and do some hard effort. But the thing is, a lot of these times with these influencers in particular, you don't really see it. You see collaborations, you see the end results of it, or you see them working with other people. You don't really see the actual day-to-day gym go with them. They have to make it an entire process, and then that, because they make it a process, it kind of makes it so they become a little bit more suspicious in their ways of how they gained their gains. If you see somebody who fundamentally breaks down why they do 500 pull-ups in their workout sessions, and how they manage fatigue and all this other stuff, and all that other jazz that goes along with it, then you can understand why they're a 6 foot, 200 plus pound behemoth. You know what I mean? Like, there is a certain level of goodwill that you can prescribe yourself just by showing the boring stuff. But for some reason, of course, I get why they don't show it, but it would help a lot to understand what's going on with them, particularly anybody that's serious about the gym. If you can understand what the inner machinations are of why they're lifting, the way that they're lifting, and how it's in their brain and how it looks like, it can help a lot. You can see it on different parts of the spectrum. You can understand why certain people just kind of suck at lifting, and then you can understand why some people are very suspicious of whether or not they're on the sauce. So it all just depends. But I think that it is a benefit regardless of where you're at, because then it could show you some things, and then fundamentally you might learn a thing or two depending on who you're following, but also it can reinforce some of the things that you already know, and thus can keep continuing on just knowing that what you're doing is working. It's just going to take some time. Of course, it's going to always take some time, but I think that this is something that's missing with a lot of gym content. There are a few content creators that actually do this, of course, and I get it. I understand it because it's not the views, it's not the prettiest thing, and also it can get boring very quickly. That's why I do the subject matter, so that way I can change it up every once in a while. So then the videos visually might stay the same, but at the same time, I'm talking about something different every single time for the most part. So more likely than not, people put little stock in this, and I think that they should put more into it and look at it and ask them, give us this evidence. I don't care if you don't do well on it. You'll probably do well in views because people are so suspicious of you that you can end up just showing what you do, and it can show exactly where their mentality is and their methodology and where their ideologies about lifting come from. And maybe it makes sense. Maybe they just have good genetics. But then again, who knows? And I don't want to get into the genetics part because that's a whole other can of worms, and I don't want to get into that. But with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This was a continuation of a random fitness thing. Always love coming back to fitness. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there and stay cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.